So, by show of hands, who's been to an event like this? Well, none as this, of course, but to an event, learned something maybe brilliant, and then a few months later, couldn't remember anything at all from that. Probably most ones, right? Now, that's what we're going to talk about for now. So not necessarily what to build. We've had plenty of expertise and interesting sessions on what to build. But now, when we get back to the office, how are we going to implement it? How are we going to actually make the change within our organization? Because your organization will resist what you've learned today. And it isn't on purpose, because it's not opinion, it's neuroscience. I'm a neuroscientist myself, haven't really been in neuroscience, but let me just get the camera back here. I know how the brain works and how you collect information and how you struggle with change, how you struggle with new processes, new tools, new programs. So what you usually see is then next week at the office, we've got other priorities. Well, maybe after next quarter, we'll have time to do this. And then next month, you come back to old habits and you remember that event. And then 6 months later, hey, there's another ABM event. That's going to be ours, number 3. Maybe that's a good time to start, finally, to start with ABM. Or with more discipline, more structure. And this is the forgetting curve from Ebbinghaus. He already knew about this in 1885 actually. That within 24 hours, 50% of what you've heard today is gone. Poof. And then 1 month later, it's 80%. So that's a lot. Now consider this in applying any change within your organization. How do people usually embed a change in your organization? Can I have a show, just some hands of examples? Okay, you've tried to, enforce is maybe a big word, you've tried to make a change in your organization. How did you do it? Can I see some hands of how you do it? PowerPoint presentation, workshop, yeah?
Changing CRM from Salesforce to HubSpot.
Yeah.
In a Salesforce house. So that took time. They have to get used to the idea, and then over time they get more open to it.
So what did you use in terms of sessions, interactive, webinars?
MT meetings and also business cases, just hard metrics.
Yeah, and how did the salespeople get along?
Not as much in the beginning. There I really have to push back and just demand that they dive into it.
Yeah.
So at some point you just get to a hurdle and hey, push through and go for it.
Yeah, probably felt painful, right?
It was a painful discussion.
Yeah, you usually have this type of board or colleagues within your organization. We have another priority, we need some more analysis, we tried before, but manager, I give up, probably somewhere along the way. This is probably recognizable, right? Now later, I'll show you exactly how to beat this. A CRO called Cal Norton. Anyone familiar with Cal Norton? No one? Oh, wow. He's I didn't think that, okay. He used what is called spaced repetition to take win rates from a 38 to 53% in 1 quarter. Let that sink in 1 quarter. That's 25% improvement? So let's talk first about where things actually break. 5 stages, 5 danger zones. Because, well, maybe let me ask you this. Where is your biggest handoff issue currently? Is it between marketing and SDR or sales? Can I show of hands? 1, 2, 3. Between SDRs and sales? See a couple of hands, some more. Between sales and customer success? Ooh, there we go. That's the biggest pain. And between CS and then back into sales or expansion, renewal, 1. Oh, so the biggest one's between sales and CS. Good to know. I expected that kind of because, of course, account-based marketing is supposed to close that gap between marketing and sales, but it is also like this third team suddenly trying to bring in alignment and disruption. And then there's the one kid in the video that got cropped out, which I guess is reflective of what we just saw in the vote. Now, there are 5 things that really kill your initiative, guaranteed. So no shared definitions. You know, what's your MQL, what's your SQL? Ownership, it's everyone's job, means it's no one's job. Competing priorities, we'll do it next quarter. We have of course, we have HubSpot. That will do it probably for us, right? And then lastly, we have the no governance mandate. Yeah, I mean RevOps, but do you really control what's in the organization? No. So let me check which one killed your last initiative. Let's vote. For one, no shared definitions. Anything that killed your initiative? No? No ownership. See a few hands coming up. Competing priorities. Mostly priorities, okay. HubSpot issues. There we go. And the no governance mandate? That's also one. Okay, so mostly competing priorities. Interesting. The one that raised competing priorities, what were the hands? Tell me your story. 30 seconds.
30 seconds. Having so many priorities that if you take a new initiative, it will not be able to do it or in HubSpot or with the sales team, and then you just make a small experiment and you just do it in Excel. And then eventually then you put it at the MT and say, hey, this is what we found out. Okay, let's maybe get that into...
Get to it next time.
Get to it next time.
Next quarter. Next quarter, absolutely. So what we see is that most organizations, also when you're talking about a change, they treat it as a Slack message or an email. You know, this is what we're going to change. Enjoy, good luck. And well, I'll show you why that's a structural mistake. I'll show you something that we call the stoplight, the traffic light, how you can go about change or at least communicate around change. Now, I wanted to share at least my framework on how I see companies. So I introduced the company operating system, and it's good to know that your customers have an identical system in that sense, with 3 layers. Governance, where you decide, strategy, priorities, KPIs, and your governance rhythm, how often you meet, what you meet about. Jurgen talked about it with his dashboarding, how often do you actually follow up on the dashboarding? How do you make that into a structure? Enablement layer, where most of the people in RevOps live, people, process, platforms, your data. And then lastly is what I call the ICP Value Loops, which is the product loop, continuous iteration of your product, and the revenue engine, which is also continuously, I feel, continuously improving, how to market, how to acquire, retain, and then upsell. And that all circles around your ICP, which is the core of both of those. And that's constantly evolving, so that's why I've got that learning loop. And the exchange is, you as a company deliver value that mostly sits from that ICP value loop. So both your product as well as your experience that they have through sales, marketing, customer success, and you get money back for it. So just to show you a little more detail, governance determines whether anything sticks. So if your CEO and your customer success actually describe around your ICP in the same way. For who here has their ICP changed last year? About half of you. And for the rest, it stayed the same? Pretty much. And do you think for those that have their ICP changed, that the founder still is, does he understand what the change has been? Is he still on top of that change? I see could you share?
Yeah, we kind of decided to move in a whole other direction. And yeah, the CEO was involved by the first creation of the ICP, but yeah, isn't involved in the second one of the ICP, and just hopes you're doing a good thing.
Good example. So steer, don't hope. Enablement, everyone invests in people and platform, but nobody invests in process or getting your data spine actually working. Sometimes people invest in culture, like you heard Michiel say, and it has done wonderfully for them. But not everyone invests in culture. They just, burn through people. So here's the test. Show me a company that's bought Gong, HubSpot, and Outreach. That's easy. It's a big list. But show me one that has documented every single handoff between marketing and sales in a proper way. That list is a lot shorter as a comparison. So this is the RevOps layer. So this is where you own enablement. You own that layer and getting that really built up. And unfortunately, most enablement programs, they operate at the lowest rung of the learning ladder, which I'll read afterwards. I'll show you why that's not good enough in a moment. Like already mentioned, product engine on the left, revenue engine on the right, and the loop is continuously learning. And here we go. What I usually find is that the constraint is almost never where the symptoms appear. So if we have ABM, I think is a very good example. I think I'll show this. So pipeline being weak, everyone blames revenue engine, mostly marketing. Well, what you can find is that, ICPs are agreed, top of funnels filled with noise, or you've got zombie deals that, sales employees aren't killing because they don't like to kill their little darlings. Forecast being wrong, people usually blame the data, but then you also find that the stage definitions aren't aligned. Reps underperforming, so people blame the reps, but usually there's no playbook or insights from the CRM that enables them to actually function better. And lastly, ABM isn't producing, so everyone blames marketing execution, but actually there was no shared scoring or a good handover SLA. The constraint is usually somewhere down the line. So I showed you the three layers. I'd like to figure out with you in the room, what are your maturity levels? So I'll ask everyone to raise their hands in a moment, and I'll share some more detailed lines of what each looks like. And I'd like to just by a show of fingers, 2, 3, 4, where you think your layer is at this moment. So for governance, by show of hands, where do you think you are currently? Yeah, go ahead. We won't judge, we won't blame. Fingers, please. Up in the air. I see 2s, I see 3s, that's nice. 2, 2, 2, 2, 1. So a lot of 2s, 1s, some 3s, no 4s, which I don't blame, that's what you often see. For enablement, read through, take a minute, and then I show fingers again. Where do you think you stand? See 3, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 3s. Oh, at least less ones. See a few, but less ones. And then the revenue engine. ICP being documented, ICP being actually encoded into the CRM, SLAs monitored. Where do you think you are? 3, nice. 2, 2. 2s, well, a lot of 2s. Okay, a lot of 2s. Now here's the thing. Did I mention it? No. Did I mention it? So one of the things that is true, and maybe I'll come back to that later, if your organization governance is a 1, it's very hard to push the other things up. You're always restrained by your lowest number. So if any of these is a 1, that is your biggest bottleneck, your biggest constraint in actually moving forward. And what we've said is you can't optimize what you haven't standardized yet. So you need to get your fundamentals in place first, and that means on governance, enablement, and of course the revenue engine. Get the ICP agreed, get the process documented. Then you can move into adoption, ensure that those salespeople are actually doing the process. And then you can start optimizing. You can use the very nice dashboards that Jurjen showed. You can use some of the signals. And then you can do amplification, which is actually more in the clay area, the clay advanced area. And that applies to every motion. And unfortunately, customer success and expansion are the worst scored in that sense. And I'll have a similar one for account-based marketing. So you've got your fundamentals, your adoption of how you improve it, your optimization, and then you go into the amplification, which is really, cadences, scoring, predictive signals. But you have to get your fundamentals in place first. Otherwise, the rest is, it falls apart. You're building on sand. So like I already mentioned, does your CEO describe your ICP the same way your CS team does? We heard in one case already no, because it changed. And I'd like to test who can describe their ICP in one sentence right now. Anyone? ICP in one sentence. Can anyone describe their ICP in one sentence? Go.
Fashion retailer with over 2,000 stores.
Pretty decent. Does everyone agree on that within the organization?
Yeah. Mostly.
Highly regulated industries with more than 100 employees.
Highly regulated industries with more than 100 employees. Any specific industries, or is that just
They have to be highly regulated.
highly regulated? How's highly regulated defined?
Banks, insurance, pension schemes, mortgage, stuff like that.
Okay, becomes two sentences almost, right? Anyone else? I mean, this is tricky, right? This is hard. And that is normal because your ICP shifts, markets move. But if your teams aren't aligned on that, it becomes very tricky to actually execute. So that's fine. That's normal. So here's the story that I started with. The 38 to 53 win rate. 1 quarter, 1 skill cluster. So Kyle Norton is the CRO at owner.com. And he analyzed 150 calls that his sales reps made using AI scoring. He found 12 skills that correlated with winning. 10 of those 12 were actually end-of-call behavior. Not even in discovery, it was how do they finish the call, how do they ensure that they've got your next meeting set up, how do they ensure that the people on the other side of the call has a warm feeling about the call itself, because that was the most indicative of having a follow-up call, a win. But here's the thing. He didn't send a Slack message. He built a 10-week program on one skill cluster, just that one skill cluster, made it the only thing that the organization worked on. So he was adamant, I'm just focusing on this. This is my priority, this is the only thing I'm doing. Everything else is noise, I'll ignore it, I'll cut it out. That was his philosophy. So change one thing at a time, and do it with a lot of depth over breadth. And here's the neuroscience thing behind it. If you don't do that, if you don't reinforce things, if you don't make people go at the skill in different ways, and I'll show that later in a moment, it sort of drops out. It's forgotten again. In one day, 50% is forgotten. 80% in a month. So for them, at least, in 100 million pipeline, that is 50 million extra closed revenue without a single extra lead, which is what people in sales usually say. Oh, I need extra money. I'll get some extra leads, more pipeline, and I'll drive it through. So for people that have had a change and had that sort of fail, and I think we already heard some of it, how many of that change is changing too many things at once? It's probably 5 different things that you're trying to put across with your sales team to, HubSpot implementation, that's a big change. And if you at the same time change the way that you define your ICP or define a process, that's a bigger change. So that's harder for people to grasp, to adopt, to sort of make it themselves.
I have a question.
Go for it.
But it's also the perfect timing to actually look at your processes.
Yes.
So, because you're implementing something new, and hey, let's also review all the processes.
Yeah. It is absolutely the best time. It is also the biggest pain that you're going to get that through. But then my question is, what did other things change? And did you also understand and accept that there's going to be a large dip in productivity due to that change?
Yes, well, we don't want it, but it's going to be there.
Yeah. So I'm going to show a couple of things of the different types of changes that we have. Slack message, there's just a new dashboard link or minor field change, easy to do in the message. A bigger change, it changes their team's day to day. So there's like a big process change, new handoff, a scoring. You do a written, but you also do a video as a support. It could be the video of the one who trains you, could be the video of your senior manager, sales manager, that tells you why they do it and how it looks like and sort of like more detail. And then the red, the high impact, the one that you're talking about, written, video, live training, enforcing to really get that through and get it in their systems, because you're teaching a new skill. Because without that reinforcement, like I mentioned again, 80% of what you learn today is gone in a month, which is a shame. It's gone very quickly. And here's a reinforcement cadence. So the same day, you do some training, and again, immediate practice. Not just listening in, actually practice. We had you do a couple of practices today. I know with Vladimir's session, there was some practice in there. 2 days later, next day, you try to reinforce one concept. 2 days later, apply it in small groups. So within the sales team, you try and apply it. Coach on real calls, and then increasingly until it's unconsciously in their system. And you do that for every change consequently, not parallel, because that's where the bump really begins. So 2 years later, for owner, Kyle Norton's company, like I mentioned, that scripting is still identical to what they changed in that rollout. It is not a program, it is DNA, and that is the direction that we want to have. With account-based marketing, with applying clay within our organization, with using that bow tie in the right way, with dashboards, with the learning that Jurjen mentioned. So consuming a training deck is the lowest level of learning, and this is how we move up in that ladder. So we try to understand it by explaining it to someone else, we apply it using a real call, we analyze why it didn't work, we judge it against a framework, and we try to build our own version. So now it's your turn. Think of that one change you tried, but that didn't work out. And please grab your phones. This is an actual assignment. Grab your phones and write it down in one sentence. What was the one thing you were trying to change? I'll give you a minute. And if you can't write it down in one sentence, you are probably trying to change too many things. That could be a diagnosis. So written down a little bit. Can I get a volunteer, please? I see a hand.
No.
Did you write something down?
Yes, I did.
Could you share it, please?
Yeah, for the Team2.HubSpot.
And where did it go wrong? If you look back at the framework, did you do too many things at once? How did you share the communication? Did you go through this ladder?
Yeah, I guess we're still in the middle of it. It's not to say that it went wrong, but you're still just running into a lot of things that are not working yet.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's, I think, something that's preventing the change, because my fear is that if that takes too long, then they might progress, and the focus will go away. We're not there yet, but could happen.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
Building a repeatable and commercially viable machine for marketing
A repeatable and commercial viable machine for marketing.
with pipeline growth as the absolute goal.
With pipeline growth, absolutely. And how did you communicate it?
Well, I'm communicating it quite often and broadly,
Mm-hmm.
but still very much within the commercial organization. Sometimes taking a step towards finance, for example, or operations. So in that sense, I have actually learned a lot from communicating, which makes all the difference because then it's growing on people.
Yeah.
Repeating it, like you said, like doing it one day and then the other day again. This is the point where I'm at now. It's actually a nice eye opener because it's something that is draining me a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I think, oh my God, can you just do it now? But obviously, you just told me that I need to repeat it more.
Yeah. So that's I think the shift of frame, that if you're the one that is behind the change, if you're the one that's driving the change, and this is for most RevOps people, for me as well, when I was 5 years in my career, I was like, why don't people just do this, right? It's logical, right? For you it's logical, for them it's like a whole different mindset. Like everyone's brain is wired differently. For most people, when they see a change coming up, they could see a potential threat. You know, how does this affect my livelihood, my bonuses, if we're talking about salespeople? How can I get along to this change? Is this change driving something me into an uncomfortable position or an uncomfortable role or activities that I don't want? So understanding that and then sort of communicating around it, going through the framework, that's the way forward. So the good thing is, you all just climbed in your taxonomy right now. So by doing this exercise, you have already started learning about my content. And hopefully then tomorrow, a little more than 50% is still stuck in your head. So there's 3 questions for Monday. Again, please pick up your phones, take out a notes app. What is that one handoff in a bow tie that if you fix would change everything? Well, probably sales and customer success. And who owns it? Who owns that handoff? Is that your CRO? Is that maybe someone head of sales? Is it no one? That's the issue, because if no one owns it. And then how would standardized look like that? Not operational, not a higher maturity, just like the basics. Write that down for yourself. Because the act of writing converts passive learning and listening, what you're doing right now, into personal commitment. And it also fights the forgetting curve that I mentioned earlier. Now, creation is the highest form of learning, and you just went through to creation. You went through the steps that I mentioned, and you started creating something with the framework that I mentioned. And this is how we're going to learn more and more. And this is how you could position it within your group. If you're trying to change the sales process or having them use a new tool, this is how you can go about it within your sales team, within your marketing team, whoever. Leadership even. Now we just need to enhance it rigorously. So I'll see you guys first thing in the morning. I'll call you and I'll figure out, I'll repeat the process. I'll ask you again, what are you going to change? So hopefully that 50% is a little higher for next year. Yeah. Now this is a little sidetrack because as everyone is developing, everyone is sort of becoming better, trying to become better at Claude. And for me, I want to start creating with Claude to ensure that I learn at the maximum speed. So I'm going to show you a visual of my digital brain that I created in collaboration with Claude, because that's a system that forces me to create my own knowledge, create my own frameworks even more and more, instead of just consuming everything that I see on LinkedIn, every infographic, every framework. When I go into my car on Monday morning, I have to drive to 1.5 hours to Enablement, and I listen to podcasts. And immediately after, when I think, this actually was like a very cool framework, I need to write this down somewhere. I go into Claude and say, hey, steal the transcript from this podcast. I've got a very nice flow for that. It will take the recording, it will put it into like a proper long transcript, and it will build it into my brain as part of the system. It will look into my frameworks, where does it align with, where does it sort of enhance the framework, and it will continuously building it up. So let me just show you how that looks like. So that is my knowledge graph. Ooh, it's a bit big. So usually it's in color, but because I'm on my laptop, of course, it doesn't work with the colors. I had to sync it across. So it starts by adding little bits of knowledge. I talked to Claude for 2 hours to tell me my career story, and sort of it picked bits and pieces out of there. I think for the last at least 6 months, I've been talking to ChatGPT and Claude for maybe more than I did with my wife. I discovered Whisper Flow, which is like very good. So you can really just talk with your computer. And I just talked through all my frameworks. I talked through all my challenges. I talked through all my customer interactions. And I started to then use Claude to really structure that in combination with this application, which is called Obsidian, which is basically a knowledge graph. It creates a knowledge graph out of it. So every single node, I can probably pick up one of them here. Let me just see. So this is my revenue operations strategy. I see that it's connected with a lot of other nodes. I've got all kinds of different nodes. It's continuously growing here. This is my technology stack. So this is everything I know around technology stack, and it has an index with all the things around it, which could be potential tech partners or specific technologies that I'd like to work with. I've got something for all of my LinkedIn content. I've got something for all of my social calls. There's a big node in here which is called Wouter Dieleman, because I call a lot with him, I work a lot with him, so there's a little node of him. And it helps, and I'll show you the result of how that actually helps me. Let me just open up my Claude and I'll show you exactly how that difference is. Where's my mouse? Here we go. So just go into this one.
I'm really curious, there's one that's not connected to anything.
Yeah, so here's the thing. So here's the thing, what happens. That's a low blow. No, actually I kept my wife and family out of here. So here's the thing. As soon as you start adding nodes, and so what Primus, I call it Primus because I'm a transformer geek. What it is I've got an inbox folder in that. So any new type of infographic or visuals or documents, I throw that in there. And then I tell Claude, pick up, look through my inbox and sort of make things out of it. Sometimes it makes up things that immediately connect well. And sometimes I have to remind it, look, there's some orphan nodes in there, see if they need to be connected or see if it's trash, if it can be archived. Perfectly fine. So good question. So here is a chat I had with Claude. It's a bit small. Let me just hide all that business. Can you see what it says? So I asked it, a B2B scale up, 40 million ARR, pipeline coverage dropping, win rate declining, marketing says, leads are good, sales says they're rubbish. What should my action plan be? Now, it gave me an answer. It says, stop arguing around lead quality, do diagnosis, where conversion is breaking, segment before you judge, audit the handoffs, check the hidden culprits, build the action plan, and you get a 30-day version of this. Who thinks this is a good response? Not a lot of hands, right? Why? It's generic. It's a little bit bullshitty. So I noticed that too, and I said, are you actually using my skills for this? Because I've built 50 Claude skills with revenue operations, like my frameworks, et cetera, et cetera. Then I said, actually, no, I did not. So it looked into 5 skills I had, and he made me run it. Now it's using my frameworks. So it asks me, where are the constraints? And it goes through specific symptoms. It looks at the pipeline is weak. What is probably the actual constraint? No, it doesn't generate pipeline. No, it's probably not shared ICP. No feedback loop between the different teams. It says it points to enablement, and then it goes into the IFA diagnosis, which says, well, it's probably information that's broken, some bits of focus, and it goes on, right? 6 stages of check, which I use, goes into an action plan, which is, like you see, probably a little bit more detailed, right? Now, does this sound like something, hopefully from me? Let me ask you, is this something that feels a little bit more body, a little bit more of an expert? I see some nods, yeah, right? And it goes on. Because I just built so much more in terms of frameworks. It shows you how to pull up like a visual for that. So that's the actual change of building your knowledge into a knowledge graph machine and applying it instead of just having to go over it manually. Now, whenever I get a request from my clients or whenever I encounter something that I don't know about, I go into full research mode, like build like a big research map, and constantly sort of tweak it and go back and give feedback. Then when it's done, I build that into a new skill, so I have that as part of me and I don't forget it again, because forgetting is what happens if you just read it. So I apply it and I learn it and I create something with it. So let me just get rid of this now. If we go back to here. Now what I think is that any organization, this is a system, 50 Claude skills now, mostly around RevOps, some other things, some personal stuff like LinkedIn creation. I think that in 2 years, every revenue operations will have something like that. Internal knowledge, how do we sell, what works well, what doesn't work. All of our sales calls that we can sort of pull up again, centrally accessed instead of scattered across different platforms. One sitting in Gong that you can't access without extra third-party software or an API call. Some in the CRM, some in hidden database layers, finance systems. You want to have that centrally accessed so you can research, so you can do something with it. And all the frameworks that make your company different, all of the way that you do your customer success, the way that you do your sales, marketing, that is grasped in here as your framework. So that when someone new joins the team, you give them one of the brains, they can just sort of just interact, chat with it, and learn and co-create with it. Hand in the back.
What would be a good starting point to create this?
Start talking to Claude. No, seriously, what I did is, and this has been sort of what I started with 6 months ago. I just started talking about how I look at my field of work, how I talked through different frameworks that I used. It started out as first 3 extra models in the revenue architecture. That's how it started. Then I was like, no, I'm way bigger than revenue architecture. Revenue architecture is this little bit within the rest. So I just started talking and talking and talking. Asked Claude to sort of help me structure it, help me sort of focus things around. And that sort of then becomes your first couple of notes of how you look at your field of expertise. And then you can expand and expand and expand. So start with the fundamentals. What is your vision on your expertise? What is your experience? Like 2 years, talk around your career. Just talk through every experience you had. Go through your resume and sort of just talk about things that you noticed, things that changed you, that you learned. And that's sort of how it sort of becomes bigger and bigger. I added in all my Fathom calls, so it'll just pull out from there, and sort of my tone of voice, it can pull from the Fathom calls, much better than I can write it. It'll just listen to how I talk to people.
Do you think at some point there's too much data in there?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So with any AI, if your context window is too large, it will spit out rubbish. So that's also part of what I ask Claude to do, be specific and be precise. Don't cross-connect just every little skill that you need. Like with the question I mentioned, 5 skills out of 50 that align with the question I have. So absolutely. But if it has the context sort of to look up into it, it is much easier. But it'll know, okay, if I need something, it's probably over there. That's what the index nodes do within the knowledge graph. Any other questions? For the whole of the presentation, maybe not just around my digital brain, but... Yep.
Curious, like, to what extent do you use this, right? Like, so do you use it as a kind of a tool when you approach a use case or when you do consulting, or like how do you actually collaborate with your client, right? Like, do you use it as a starting point and end point? How do you do that?
I first start talking and thinking out loud about the issue that I have, because that helps you formulate your own thoughts and also give it sort of a startup to go to. You don't start with Claude like I did, like that little few sentences I did. Don't do that, because then Claude could hallucinate. Start with your own conversation, with your own thought process, then put that in, and then ask to consider, okay, going through the frameworks, this and that, and you'll get it like a much better sort of outcome or result to it than you would otherwise. Does that answer the question? Okay. Any other things? No? Who wants to start building their brain tomorrow? Oh, there we go. There we go. Nice.